Hello and welcome to another edition of Inside Guns with your host, me, the Yankee Marshal. Tonight I want to talk about a topic that you would think would be a slam dunk in the pro-gun community. Especially people who say, I'm a no-compromise Second Amendment person. You would think if that's true, this would be something that almost nobody would disagree with. Well, the topic is constitutional carry. And sadly, a lot of people in the gun community do disagree with it. A lot of people call it, this just should be called untrained morons with guns. They use that idea there, that notion that, if we just had constitutional carry, if people didn't have to have a permit to carry, just every idiot would be carrying a gun. And for one, I don't think that's true, because I think if someone is a ridiculous idiot, they probably can't afford to buy a gun. If they're that stupid. But that whole notion to me is kind of elitist. It's kind of like, only people that I deem worthy, or people that I think are smart enough, or people that I think meet a certain level of, social status, whatever, are worthy to carry a gun, or people that have had a certain amount of training. They're the only ones you can trust to carry a gun. And we'll talk a little more about that in our next segment here. But like I said, I find that whole thing elitist. If you truly have that little faith in your fellow man, your fellow American, then how can you even begin to say you're a no-compromise Second Amendment person? You can't. You have to say, I believe in the Second Amendment for most people. Because the Second Amendment doesn't just say you have a right to keep a shotgun in your closet. It says you have the right to keep and bear arms. Every person has the right to bear firearms, and therefore they have a right to have them for self-defense, whatever. If you have a right to self-defense and you have a right to bear arms, then logically you have a right to bear arms for self-defense. So to deprive that from some people because you think they're not intellectually gifted enough, or they're not the right type of person socially, or they're not the right color, which has been a lot of what this has been about for years, concealed carry permits, etc. The first carry permits were created to keep black people from having guns. And nowadays they use these laws and the fees to get them and the hoops you got to jump through to keep poor people from getting guns. Carry permits have only been about keeping certain people from carrying. And even though most people I know would never even think to say, I don't think black people should have carry permits, I don't think they should carry guns, they would find that abhorrent. But yet they are okay with saying, I don't think everyone should be allowed to carry a gun. It's pretty much the same thing there. The only difference is you're not making your decisions based on your prejudices about race. You're basing it on your prejudices about other groups of people. You're deciding that, rednecks shouldn't have guns, or lefties shouldn't have guns, Antifa members shouldn't have guns. It's so dangerous to have an Antifa member having a gun. If we had constitutional carry, those Antifa people would be able to carry guns, or those Proud Boys would be able to carry guns, or whatever your boogeyman of choice is. But that's ridiculous. Like I say, that is something that you cannot square with saying you're a believer of the Second Amendment. Because if you believe in restrictions, especially restrictions as arbitrary as that, you're not pro-Second Amendment. You might be pro-gun, but you're not pro-Second Amendment. And this channel is about being pro-Second Amendment. Everyone should have the right to carry. Any adult citizen, and I say adult citizen, should have the ability to exercise their Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. Regardless of their socioeconomic status, regardless of their educational status, regardless of their political ideals, they should have the right to carry. And there shouldn't be any government involvement in that. Like I've said, the reason the government gets involved isn't for safety. It isn't. There's no way for them to even try to say that. There's no statistical evidence that say carry permits make anyone safer, that it makes society safer. There's just no evidence of that, period. It's all about just keeping certain people from having guns. And who wants the government being able to decide who does and who doesn't get a gun? Not me. That's for one. And I know some people are like, but most people are so stupid. Well, I will agree that a lot of people are not the brightest bulbs in the shed. But that's not for me to judge whether you're smart enough to have a gun. To me, it's like, guns are pretty simple. The end with the hole in it goes towards the person, and you never put your finger on the trigger unless you're willing to destroy something or kill something. Not hard to figure out. Now, a lot of people say, well, the people are too dumb to figure that out. I don't think so. There's no IQ test to drive a car. Cars, to me, are way more dangerous than guns. Way more. Those are multi-ton weapons on wheels. And we're all zipping past each other 70, 80 miles an hour all the time. And some of those people behind that wheel are dumber than a sack of rocks. But they still know how to drive that car, and they still manage every day to get where they're going without running over anyone's baby or a nun or anything like that. Same thing with firearms. They're a tool. They are a weapon, but they're simple. They're not hard to use as long as you don't misuse them. Now, just like with cars, some people misuse cars. There's always some whack job woman who runs over her cheating boyfriend with her car, or some redneck that thinks it's a good idea to do donuts in a parking lot full of shoppers or whatever, and accidents happen. Not accidents, negligent acts happen. Same thing with guns. There's going to be some people that misuse them, and some people will get hurt. But there's no evidence that having carry permits changes any of that. Even if you look at states that have stringent requirements to have carry permits and states that have no real requirement, you just can go in and get a permit as long as you can write the check. And if you look at states that have constitutional carry, there's really no difference as far as accidental deaths from firearms or accidental injuries from firearms. Per capita, per gun owner, it's not really that different in any of them. There's no evidence that the states that have the really loose constitutional carry have more accidents or more people getting killed. And there's no evidence that links the stricter regulations on carrying to lower murder rates or lower accident rates, etc. There's nothing that actually links those things together. So I do not believe in carry permits. I don't think they should be a thing. Just like I don't like background checks, I'm going to go on the crazy bandwagon here and say, don't believe in carry permits. I think every state should have universal background checks. Excuse me, I just said something really stupid. I think every state should have constitutional carry. That universal background checks are ridiculous. They don't do anything for safety. They're just a means of controlling. Someone's going to use that out of context, but this is late and I ain't editing that out. So we'll have to deal with it there. But I think every state should have constitutional carry. I don't think it makes anyone less safe. I don't think it makes anyone really even more safe. I think actually there's a lot more evidence that it would make someone more safe if more people were carrying. But I can't prove that, so I won't make that statement right now. But I will say no evidence that it makes anyone safer to limit who can carry a gun or to have the government have a say in who has a permit to carry. Just don't buy it, don't like it. So I'm one of those people, like I say, I'm going to be a nut job and say, don't agree with background checks like I covered in another video. And I also don't agree with carry permits because I don't think they have anything to do with safety. I think they just have to do with control. They have to do with prejudice. They have to do with discrimination. And that's something we shouldn't let stand. Like I said, you can say people are stupid all you want, but I know a lot of stupid people that can do a lot of things with tools that I can't do. And can handle them very safely. I know a lot of stupid people that work with some very dangerous equipment every day, and they do just fine. And no one would ever think to say, oh, I don't know if those people should be, I don't know if rednecks should be allowed to use backhoes. So they shouldn't say it with guns either. So if you really want to say you're someone who supports the Second Amendment and not just someone who's pro-gun, then you should not be okay with carry permits any more than you're okay with any other anti-gun laws. And with that being said, there's always one group of people that come crawling out of the woodwork whenever you say you don't agree with carry permits or anything like that, because you get these tactitards, for lack of a better word, that crawl out of the woodwork, like I said, and go, but if there's no requirement for training and no requirement for this and that for a background check or whatever for carry permits, then people aren't going to get trained properly, and people need training. Training's so important. Everyone has to train. Don't you agree with that? They use that like a trap, like they're going to get you to say, are you going to say you don't think training's important? Is that what you're going to say? And to those people, I say, yeah, I'm going to say it's not important. At least not important in the way you mean it, because I don't use the word training. I like to use the word Practice. Practice is very important. Learn the basics, even if you learn them from YouTube's or your grandparents or your neighbor, whoever you learn them from. And then once you learn the basics, once you know what you're going to do, point the hole in towards that, pull the trigger, learn how to do your grip, etc. Practice it. Repetition over and over and over again to where you can just, point your gun and shoot and not be the least bit startled when it goes off and know how to aim it and know what you're going to do in a bad situation. Think things through. Practice, practice, practice. But unfortunately, what a lot of people say mean when they say training is they mean plop down $1,000, go to a weekend course somewhere and learn some tricks. And I'm not going to say that's bad. If you've got an extra $1,000 and you've got the time, training is fun. And it's helpful because you learn some stuff there that you get to take back home and practice, practice, practice with. So it is beneficial, but necessary? No. Guns are simple tools. You get the basics down and you go out and practice with it and practice with it and practice with it, you'll be fine. Here's the thing. A lot of people think they're more trained or they're more capable because I took a force-on-force training once from blah, blah, blah. I'm like, great. For 2 days, you did something that you haven't practiced again since then, hardly. Because when was the last time you were with a bunch of different people with simunitions where you could practice it? So repetition probably wasn't much of a thing with it. So great that you had fun for 2 days, but unless you're taking that class again and again and again and again and again and shelling out the money again and again and again and again and again, you're not getting enough repetition to make it worthwhile. And unless you have a bunch of other people and the equipment to go practice it after the class, you're not getting a whole lot from it. You might understand some little tricks that you can put into practice when you do practice, but overall, you're really not gaining that much. And a lot of the fanciful scenarios that come up in training, they're great. They're fun. And it's awesome to think of those things. Hell, that's what the zombie apocalypse stuff is about. It's about thinking about situations and how you will deal. So training is great. I like training. I like classes. I think a lot of people could benefit from basic handgun classes, basic legal classes, etc. You take as many of them as you want because they are fun, and whatever you can financially afford, go get. Now, I will not be one of those people who says, well, you got $1,000. You shouldn't buy a $1,000 gun. You should buy a $500 gun and then a $500 training class. I'd rather you buy a $1,000 gun, especially if it's a gun that's good enough that you'll actually carry it every day. If that $500 gun is not small enough or doesn't have the right system that you like, the method of arms or whatever, you won't like it. You won't carry it. So I'd rather you spend the $1,000 on a gun and then go practice. Practice only costs the price of ammo. So those people, I don't like those people at all when they're like, oh, you should be on training. That's fucking bullshit. You buy the best gun you can buy and then practice with it. If you have to buy something that's $500 and $500 something else, buy a $500 gun and $500 worth of ammo. $500 worth of ammo spent on a range practicing the basics will do you far better than a 2-day class for $500 that you probably won't retain a lot of. Being able to go through 500 rounds of ammo in a low stress situation where you can practice your basics and get things down to where you can do them well, and then you can move on to more high stress training that you can set up things for yourself, like you have to do something before a certain time and blah, blah, blah. That's great. I think that'll do you more good than one class. So this whole notion that training is a must, and if you've bought a gun and you haven't paid for at least as much money in training, then you're not qualified. I made a point to Rob Pincus one time in a chat that's bullshit because I know some old ridge runners back in West Virginia that have never had a training class in their life. And if you dropped him and them into the woods and said one of you comes out alive, they would have skinned him and ate him before sundown. And he's like, no, I'm trained. None of them people. Blah. And I'm like, you're living in a fantasy world, dude. That training is not going to... those people can shoot the eye out of a squirrel from 100 yards. And they can move through the bush like you'd never know they were there. And if you think your classes have put you over the top of that, you're living in a fantasy world. So practice. Those people, it's a lifestyle to them. They do it every day. It's repetition. It's practice. They're not taking formal classes. They're out there hunting to live. They're moving through the woods in a way that game doesn't hear them. They're way beyond anybody's taking classes. Life experience. So that's why I say training is great. Training is fun. And if you can afford it, do it. But if you can't afford it, get a gun, buy some ammo, and practice. Practice, practice, practice. If your choice every month is to take a one-day course, an 8-hour course, or have enough ammo to shoot every day, have that ammo, shoot every day. Look up some shit on YouTube, learn the basics, look how to hold the gun, look up things like I'm shooting left and low. What does that mean? Oh, it means I'm doing this. I'll rectify that. Do that and then practice, practice, practice. Because practice is way more important than training, in my opinion. And the fact that anyone needs training to have a gun, or else they're just going to blow their own head off, that's ridiculous. Like I said, that leads into that whole thing that people I was saying before about constitutional carry. So if you can afford to train and you like to train, some people don't even like those high pressure situations. If you like it and can afford it, go do it. If you can't, just practice. Buy yourself some ammo, look up stuff, practice it. That's all you really need to do. You don't need to be some sort of specially trained commando to be successful with your handgun in defending the lives of yourself or your family or anyone else. It's not a requirement, no matter what the tactitards say. All right, I want to end the show today with another viewer EDC, our concealed carrier of the day. Today we have Eric S., and he is carrying a Kimber K6S double action, single action, 2-inch revolver with Hogue rubber grips, which he says is a lifesaver because it really does help on that recoil. And he's carrying it in a Mike Moon custom outside waistband leather holster. Now, he does have the steel clips on his holster instead of the belt loops, which I actually kind of like myself. I like the clips better. I think they don't distort your belt so much. But looks good. Like I say, I love people who carry revolvers. Now, this is an all-steel revolver, so it's not the lightest gun you could carry. An LCRX or something like that would be a lot lighter. But it looks like Eric here has had the forethought and the ingenuity to counter the weight of the gun by having his ass surgically removed. That's a great idea, something I probably wouldn't have thought of. I got to hand it to him for that. So there's our concealed carrier of the day, Eric S. carrying his Kimber K6S double action, single action in his Mike Moon custom outside the waistband leather holster. All right, everybody, thanks for coming. That's another episode of Inside Guns with the Yankee Marshal. I hope you come again for our next episode. And until then, I just want to remind everyone that this channel is 100% viewer funded. I do not take advertising. I do not deal with groups like Leviathan Group. I do not take money from the NRA or the GOA or any of those companies to try to convince you to give them your money. So if you want to fund this channel, you want to become a part of the channel, please go over to patreon.com/the Yankee Marshal, become a patron of the channel. And with that being said, I'll sign off as usual by saying, as far as the state of the world is concerned today, it is what it is. But in the future, if we all work together and do the things I know we can do, what it will be is something better.